Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlang. Today I bring you Nelson Mandela spokesperson, Mr. Carl Niehaus. We'll discuss the judicial overreach. Was the court wrong in demanding that President Zuma provide the documents of why he reshuffled his cabinet? Mr. Niehaus, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to get into the business of tonight. You're a great speaker, great writer. You're President Nelson Mandela spokesperson. You still run a blog to this day, former ambassador, former member of the NEC. But what got my attention the most is your open letter to Judge Valley. And if I quote, you say, "My lord, it is high time that you take your jacket and get out of chambers." Now, Judge Valley's ruling was that President Zuma must provide in 5 days the documents to what empowered his decision to reshuffle his cabinet. You made a valid point, but tell me, Mr. Niemand, why did you respond to Judge Valley?
I've been with former President Mandela for quite some time. And I watched him being prepared to accept the rule of law. So the first thing that I want to say is I care about the rule of law. And I've watched Mr. Mandela subjecting himself at one point to what was actually quite, perhaps one could even call it a ridiculous approach to try and get him to appear in court. He accepted that. He dealt with it. My concern is that I do not believe that we are dealing here in the first instance with a legal decision. We are dealing with a politically motivated legal ruling. That's very different. And we're dealing with a politically motivated ruling which flies in the face of what the whole intention was when we wrote the Constitution. As I said, I'm no longer a kid. So I was around when the Constitution was written. In fact, I was a member of the Constitutional Assembly. So I remember the debates that we had, especially also about the issue of the prerogative of the president and executive powers. And we were very clear that the president has to have this prerogative to appoint his or her cabinet. And that prerogative cannot be questioned, should not be questioned, should not be thrown out there for anyone in the public domain to demand that the president at any point must come and explain why he's taken that decision, because these are political decisions. And we do not want a situation where the executive finds it impossible to govern. The president has to be able to appoint his cabinet. You can understand that any person who the president removes from cabinet may feel aggrieved. Political parties who are in the opposition has as their task as opposition to always try and make life as difficult as possible for government.
Mr. Niemand,
So let me just explain.
Yeah.
If we now open this door for the executive to be questioned on the president's ruling and decision on cabinet, are we actually allowing those possible aggrieved parties every time that any president wants to take a decision about cabinet to question it and ask for reasons? We must understand that we're not just dealing here with the issue around President Zuma. But if we allow this legal precedent, which, as I say, is politically motivated, to go through, we will allow every future president in South Africa to be questioned in this way. And I believe that will make the governance of South Africa and the ruling and work of the executive almost impossible. We cannot allow that.
Mr. Niehaus, I want to point to your attention some of the things that the judge said in demanding President Zuma provide the documents of why he reshuffled his cabinet. And number one, he says the announcement caused a great deal of contestation for a significant proportion of the populace. What did the judge mean by that?
I don't understand how a judge make such a generalization. Listen to what he's saying. A great deal of contestation. How much contestation? How much consternation? I don't know. What I do know is, by the same token, as far as I could see on the social media and everywhere, there had been many people who actually appreciated the decision of President Zuma and liked his appointments. So we are dealing here with a subjective judgment from the judge, and he's trying to use this subjective judgment to say that the president now has to go and compromise his own prerogative in terms of his decision and put these reports into the public domain.
Well, he says it is no exaggeration to say it was received with shock, alarm, and dismay by many. But you say that there wasn't shock and dismay by many, and the judge is now participating in a political arena. This is not his place.
Look, there may be shock or dismay by some people. In any democracy, people will express their point of view. But at the same time, I say there were many people who actually appreciated the decision of the president. So is the judge saying that he knows on the balance of these statistics that the majority of people were against this decision? He can't say that. He doesn't have that information. I can, by the same token, say, no, I believe that the majority of South Africans actually agreed with the president's decision. And you see, we're on the quicksand of assumption here. And the way I understand it is that a judge must be very careful to go and make a decision that he takes on that quicksand of assumption rather than on proper and well-argued fact.
Well, speaking of quicksand, the judge says one reason for this is that came on the heels of an extensive public complaint that incessant malversation had embedded itself in our public life and that the country was mired in quicksand of corruption.
You see, again, this is a generalized opinion, subjective opinion that the judge is expressing. Where are the facts? As I said in the piece that I wrote, I challenge the judge to find any academic who's his or her salt worth who will accept simply such a statement and say that such a statement is justifiable under the circumstances.
Do you think that the judge is playing in a political periphery, or that the judge is then captured by the Democratic Alliance?
Well, look, I don't know if the judge is captured by the Democratic Alliance, but he seems to be doing the bidding. The judge is not, in this instance, dealing with the objective facts as I would have hoped him to do. He is subjectively allowing his own views or views that had been given to him by possibly a political party to influence his judgment. We cannot in South Africa allow that to happen, because if we allow this, we have a serious precedent of judicial overreach. And this, as I've indicated earlier, will impact on the future of how the executive can govern. And we have to continue to keep the separation of powers. This kind of judgment is actually leading to a situation where the separation of powers are all scrambled up. Surely that was not the intention of our Constitution. Otherwise, we would not have had the three different pillars of government and separation of power. And surely we cannot have a subjective opinion of a judge who possibly could have been captured by a political party to come and do this to us, not just because of the current situation, but also for the sake of the future.
The Democratic Alliance is demanding all the documents that moved President Zuma to reshuffle his cabinet. President Zuma's defense team or representatives say the DA must now produce the intelligence report that is cited. What does that mean of our legal or judicial system?
Well, you see, the DA says that they believe there's a particular report And they talk about that report. So it seems that they have access to this report. It seems that they may have a copy of this report. So I think President Zuma is quite correct through his legal representatives to say, well, if you have this report, present it. Tell us what this is about. At the same time, I have a problem that the judge seems to want President Zuma to present to us whatever documents there may be or may not be to explain and rationalize his decision.
I can attempt to understand where the DA got its view that there is an intelligence report. Mr. Pravin Gordhan, in his farewell press conference at Treasury, raised the document and said this is the intelligence report, and said it was an unintelligent intelligence report and was like a document that was written by a child. Now, you worked very closely with President Mandela and even President Zuma. In your knowledge, Mr. Niehaus, who would have the hands on an intelligence report?
Well, the person who should have an intelligence report is the president. But at the same time, the president deals, and this is my understanding of how Mr. Mandela used to deal with intelligence and how I believe someone as astute in intelligence as President Zuma would deal with it, will deal with it in all confidence. So whether Mr. Pravin Gordhan had that document, and if he had the document, whether he is capable in terms of his intelligence capabilities to analyze that document and make the kind of statements that he made, I think is open to conjecture and is open to questioning.
But let's
understand that it would be in Mr. Gordhan's interest to say that such a report is childish and poorly written.
But let's assume, Mr. Niehaus, that there is an intelligence report, for argument's sake. What does it mean for our intelligence department, for state security, if then Mr. Pravin Gordhan were to release the report, or if President Zuma is then subpoenaed to release a report that is highly confidential?
Intelligence should not be released into the public domain. Intelligence is exactly that. It is there to inform the executive, but it is also at the same time to be kept in a situation where it is not publicly made available. And I fully understand why it would be resisted by President Zuma or anyone else to release intelligence reports. In fact, it could possibly even be illegal for President Zuma to do so. So we must be careful to just accept that an intelligence report should be released into the public domain because someone feels that that is a good idea. Intelligence is there to inform the executive so that they can govern properly with the necessary knowledge. But a report is no longer an intelligence report when it's thrown into the public domain and get used in that manner.
Well, there are many intelligence reports, I would say. Many have been circulating on Twitter. We've understood the SACP gave the intelligence report, or a copy of the intelligence report, to Mr. Pravin Gordhan. We're not even aware if that is the original intelligence report or the contents of that intelligence report. What does it mean for people who release an intelligence report or who have a report that is a state document that is highly confidential? Isn't that breaching the intelligence code of this country?
Of course it does. And Sifiso, look, we're dealing here now with a very murky situation. For a start, we don't know whether the people who claim that they have an intelligence report actually have it. I've got absolutely no way to be able to judge whether this is real or not. But let's deal with the crux of your question. If someone managed to get hold of a report for whatever reason, whether it was given to them or they in some kind of underhand manner managed to get it, but they are a person in the movement, meaning by that the ANC, the South African Communist Party, the trade union movement. What does it say about their discipline? What does it say about their ability to work within the structures? If they take then, let's say that report is existing and that report is in their hands. If they now take that report and throw it into the public domain, it's ill discipline. It shows a lack of preparedness to work within the structures of the organization. And as far as I'm concerned, such a person should be very strictly censored for their ill-disciplined behavior. The organization that I joined when I was 19 years old in Botswana was an organization that always insisted on us being disciplined and working within the internal democratic structures of the ANC. I will have a very serious problem with anyone who does have access to any document, who's an ANC member, and who then goes and puts that document into the public domain. I must ask myself, is that person truly still behaving as an ANC person?
You know, the plot thickens, Mr. Niehaus. Following the Democratic Alliance, the Helen Suzman Foundation has gone to the court to demand that President Zuma provide reasons and the documents. Do you think this is a plot or a sort of attempt to reverse the head of state's decision to axe Mr. Pravin Gordhan? Is this, in fact, all about Mr. Pravin Gordhan?
I do not believe that it is even, in the first place, an attack on President Zuma. President Zuma is coincidental in this matter. This is an attack by those powers that, for lack of a better word, one can describe as the common group of white monopoly capital, who are unhappy because of the decisions that had been taken by the executive, because it changed the dynamics within Treasury. The important thing of what happened with this cabinet reshuffle is that for the first time in the history of democratic South Africa since 1994, the decision on the appointment of the minister and the deputy minister of finance, therefore that whole power dynamic within Treasury, has not been subjected to the approval of the white monopoly capital group. President Zuma, in his position as the executive, took a decision, and that group is now fearing that they're losing their grip over Treasury and feeling that in the process, the implementation of radical economic transformation can challenge their power and their continuation of control of the South African economy.
Should we then say that white monopoly capital doesn't want South Africans or black people to participate in this economy? And that's why they're worrying about Mr. Pravin Gordhan and Cebisi Jonas and not about the other ministers who are reshuffled or even axed. Because I think these documents pay particular attention to Pravin Gordhan and Cebisi Jonas and overlooks all the other ministers and deputy ministers who have been reshuffled and
They don't even seem to care about any of the other ministers and their appointments. And they've not expressed any opinion, as far as I can see, about the competence of many of those ministers. And there have been very good appointments amongst those appointments that President Zuma made. Very competent people, people who I know who's got a long history in the ANC and who are very capable. So no, they're not concentrating on that. They're just concentrating on the issue of the minister and the deputy minister of finance. And their concern is that they want to continue to control this economy. Now, they may be happy to have a small group of black business people to participate in this control. But what they don't want is a true change in the power dynamics of South Africa, and that the majority of black people in this country can, in fact, gain control of the South African economy. That is what they're trying to resist. And that is what this whole issue, including the marches that we've seen on the streets of South Africa, the actions of Save South Africa campaign, all of that, in essence, is about the continuation of control of white monopoly capital over the economic resources of South Africa and the decision-making in our economy.
So, Mr. Niehaus, what does it mean for the presidency moving forward if President Zuma does not provide the documents that the DA is seeking for? And this is a two-sided coin. Either he supplies the documents, it means any ANC president moving on will have to explain his or her actions to the Democratic Alliance, or should the president not provide the documents, he is then in contempt of court. What does this mean for the presidency?
Look, I think the important thing is exactly what the ANC's own statement on this said, that the president had to appeal this decision. And I obviously hope that the process, the legal process that the president is now going through will be successful, and that it will make it possible for the president not to provide these documents. But regardless of what the situation is, and obviously we have to accept that ultimately the president has to accept the rulings of the court, and I'm sure he will, because he's always done that. But ultimately the challenge for President Zuma and for any future president in South Africa is going to be how they deal with this issue of white monopoly capital trying to continue to maintain control over the economy of South Africa. That is the critical challenge that we are faced with at this juncture of our history. That is the second phase of our national democratic revolution. And President Zuma will have to bite that bullet. As far as I can see, he's doing that. And as far as I can see, he is prepared to stick his neck out and say, I am going to work for true radical economic transformation. And I believe that is the reason why he's so much under attack. Let's hope that by 2017 December, when we are also going to elect a new ANC president, that the ANC will have enough presence of mind and will be clear enough about the need to challenge this issue of white monopoly capital, that we will appoint, through our election processes, a follow-up president that will commit him or herself to this continuation of the struggle to bring economic freedom to the majority of South Africans.
Now, Mr. Niehaus, you were in the Constitutional Assembly that designed this constitution that the world believes is the finest constitution on earth. Does this show you that there's been too many loopholes in this constitution? Do you think you erred in designing the constitution that we enjoy today?
Sefesu, the constitution is a document written in a particular historical moment. So you deal with the balances of power.
Does it deprive black people, this constitution that we regard
there are
as
challenges
the
in the, let me just finish the point that I'm making. So one has to be careful to say that one necessarily at that point erred. What I'm saying is what you write in a constitution also reflects what the balance of powers are. The issue that we have to face with now is if it may not be necessary to make certain changes to the constitution in order to be able to address some of these issues. One of the issues that I'm very concerned about is the issue of land. And I think it is necessary for us to consider whether there's not a way that we can either change the constitution through cooperation with other political parties, or find ways through the ordinary legislative process within the constitutional framework to address that issue, that we are going to stop this situation where we have a willing buyer, willing seller. We have not been able to adequately restore the land to the majority of people. What we have to say to ourselves today is, let's see what this constitution has achieved up to now, and is it able to still deliver what was the essence or the heart of the Freedom Charter? And the Freedom Charter talks about the land shall be shared. It talks about true sharing of economic power and sharing of the means of production. We have to ask ourselves, at this juncture, now, in 2017, is the Constitution as it stands at this very moment still able to deliver on those needs that have been articulated already in 1956 at Kliptown when the Freedom Charter was written. We have to return to that heart of what was the essence of the ANC's commitment to the people of South Africa. And that essence is, we will not just bring you a ballot box and a ballot paper. We will give you economic power, and it will be shared amongst the people of South Africa. That is what the people shall govern truly mean.
Mr. Niehaus, you're a stalwart. The founding member of our
38 years in the ANC now, and usually a veteran is 40 years, so I'm 2 years short of being a veteran.
Revolutionary in our struggle. What do you make of the veterans calling for President Zuma to step down, calling for a consultative meeting, a consultative conference ahead of the policy conference? Do you think there are too many factions in the ANC today that make it difficult or almost impossible for the ANC to bring about service delivery?
Look, I'm disappointed with veterans who go out into the public domain and call for a democratically elected president of the ANC to step down. I'm surprised that people who are veterans behave like that. What I would have expected from them was that they can work within the structures of the ANC. If they want to see change, take it to the branches. Take it through the constitutional structures. But don't go and jump onto every possible public platform and make public statements, because that is not the way the ANC operates. When in exile, there were unhappiness about certain things that were happening in the ANC called the Morogoro Conference, dealt with those issues internally. The one thing that has kept this organization together has been organizational discipline. The one thing that made it possible for us to work as a united movement has been our ability to deal with our problems inside our organization and not to take it out there into the public domain. I'm disappointed that people who have been in the ANC for 40 and more years do not show the discipline that should be required and which one can reasonably expect from them under the circumstances. They set a poor example to the young people in the ANC, and they shouldn't do it.
Mr. Niehaus, we're sadly out of time. I hope to have you again. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
And there you have it, South Africa. We are right on our way to the policy conference. 2019 is ahead of us. President Mandela's spokesperson has spoken. I thank you for tonight. I am Sifiso Mahlangu. Pray for South Africa. See you next time. Good night.